Gear up for Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. It's your final word on sports all across the state. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now here are your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Their defense, the same thing. Experienced group up front in their front seven, got 3 of their 4 starters back. I think the one guy, I believe 96, got drafted from last year, but 3 of those other guys are back. 2 of the backers are back, so really experienced group.
They're an impressive team. They got a lot of guys with talent. Like their back, he gets on the edge, he can make stuff happen. They got receivers that, can fly down the field. Their quarterback can make plays. They're a very impressive team, but, our preparation, that's what we believe is going to help us out.
It's game day here on Sports Talk. Welcome into the program. Kevin McCrary and the Professor Tom Hayes at your service here in our Columbia studios, downtown Columbia on Main Street, the Main Street of sports, right here on Sports Talk as we get ready for our football weekend. It's always kind of cool when we get a Thursday night game. It makes for an interesting week because it just sneaks up on you, but there is nothing wrong with big, meaningful football on a Thursday night, and that's what we have tonight with Clemson ripping the lid off of ACC play and taking on Georgia Tech in Hotlanta tonight. And also joining us from the ATL, from Bobby Dodd Stadium, the house of horrors for Clemson of late. Have not won there since 2003, 15 turnovers in that span and all of those losses. Phil Kornbluth has set up shop at Bobby Dodd Stadium where he is enjoying the mix that the DJ is playing there at Bobby Dodd Stadium and getting ready for a little Clemson Georgia Tech action. Corn?
Yes, we are. It is a humid afternoon here in Atlanta, but unlike in South Carolina where we had a lot of rain today, when we crossed over into the Peach State, the clouds moved away and the skies have brightened up. It's a hot, humid afternoon heading into the evening here at Bobby Dodd Stadium, Grant Field, the artificial surface. And we're going to have a good night for football, Clemson and Georgia Tech. The last time Clemson lost a regular season game was 2 years ago in November, 2 years ago right here in the afternoon, where just to my left, Deshaun Watson was leading a drive. He goes down. The Tigers are leading. I think it was their second possession. Looks like they were going to go in and score, start to put that thing away early. He goes down. Cole Stout comes in, throws the first of 2 pick sixes, and the rest was history. The Tigers could not score a touchdown. Georgia Tech ended up winning. That's the last time Clemson has defeat in the regular season. And they'll try to keep their 18-game regular season winning streak going tonight in a place, where they haven't won since 2003. And usually it's because Georgia Tech has good teams. There's nothing mystical. This place is not overly intimidating. It seats 55,000. I doubt it'll be filled tonight. So there's nothing along those lines here. It's not like the Dean Dome or Carmichael Auditorium when it comes to Clemson basketball where all kind of freaky, weird things happen. It's just, Georgia Tech usually has, under Paul Johnson, a good team. They didn't have one last year. Occasionally they'll drop off the cliff and be really bad, but they bounce back because their quarterback, whoever it happens to be at that particular time, is an excellent quarterback, and they've got that now in Justin Thomas. He and Deshaun Watson, 2 of the 3 active leading total offense leaders in the ACC going at it tonight. Watson number 1 and Thomas number 3. So do not discount Georgia Tech at all in their chance to upset the Tigers tonight. 9.5-point dogs at home. And as I said last night, I definitely would take the points.
Well, the interesting thing is, that stat since 2003, but they don't like to play them every year at Bobby Dodd Stadium. But I think the most interesting stat is this. If I'm not mistaken, Brent Venables is undefeated against option teams. And so that might be the stat right there, because what really opened my eyes yesterday or when we had the tape.
No, he lost in 2014.
4-1. Yeah,
4-1.
Yeah,
4-1. But the interesting thing that caught my ear was when he said, I have an intimate knowledge of the option. That's why I played the Scott quarterback, which tells me he knows some things.
Yeah, well, he does know some things, and he absolutely shut down Georgia Tech last year. Justin Thomas struggled. The Yellow Jackets had 71 yards rushing in that game. Now, this is a better Georgia Tech team offensively this year. That team last year, they lost a couple of their running backs in the preseason. I think they lost another one in the fall camp, so they were hodgepodging it a little bit position, and they weren't all cylinders with that option attack. But they'll be better, certainly. I think defensively they're going to struggle to contain Clemson. I think Clemson really is going to bust out offensively. I know they did to a degree against South Carolina State last week. That's kind of a game we all just toss out. But I think Clemson is going to be firing away on offense tonight. And I think Clemson's going to win by double digits. Maybe I'm going out on a limb there, Corn. There have been some goofy things that have happened in this series. There was that phantom holding call, at least depending on who you talk to. Dabo Swinney will tell you Thomas Austin did not do anything wrong on that play, and they lost down in Atlanta on that play. You mentioned the Watson thing. They played in this wasn't in Atlanta, but when they played in the ACC championship game, neither team punted. Neither team punted in that game, and both teams had over 300 yards rushing. That's something you don't see every day in college football. So it has been, and I think they went 6 years where every game was decided by exactly 3 points, not average 3, exactly 3 points for 6 straight series. I mean, so this has been a pretty intriguing series when these two teams get together.
Well, absolutely. I mean, these teams share a heritage with John Heisman, and they've been playing for a long, long time, and for the longest time, every game was in Atlanta before Clemson finally got a chance to play it at their place, much like with the USC series. So, yeah, and of course, being so close and so many Clemson graduates and fans living in the Atlanta metropolitan area, it's a great place for Clemson to come for a road game. And there'll be a lot of Clemson people here. I have been here for some Clemson games where Tiger fans have filled up the entire end zone seating. And have had 7,000 to 8,000 people in here. I don't know if you'll have that many here on this Thursday night. As we mentioned last night, Tech had some more tickets available for their students. Their students had picked up their initial allotment. They were making more tickets available for them, so there'll be a large student contingent here. But I don't know if they're going to sell the place out. You know how the sports fans are in Atlanta. If you're really, really good, they're going to come and support you. I'm not sure yet they believe in this Georgia Tech team. A win tonight, they'll certainly believe in it then. But, they beat Boston College in Ireland, and, again, looks like Boston College is really bad. And that was a game that they had to pull out at the very end. Then they beat Mercer here, of course, an FCS team. And then they handled Vanderbilt with ease. They scored 31 straight points to finish off Vanderbilt last weekend. So they get Clemson here tonight, and they get Miami here next weekend. So pull off a couple of wins in those games, and the people in Atlanta will start to believe in Paul Johnson once again.
Yeah, it seems like they're always on again, off again with believing in Paul Johnson at Georgia Tech. Every time it looks like they're going to run him out of town, he turns things around. That program is either really, really good or really, really and I think usually when they're picked to be really bad, they end up being really good and vice versa. It is a very interesting program, that triple option offense that is goofy, unorthodox, most people would call it. Not Paul Johnson. He's very defensive about those things. But I still think Clemson wins big tonight. We're coming up on a break. We got a jam-packed show tonight. We have Mike Morgan coming up, Morgan on the Move. We'll have our coach and quarterback segment tonight it's a game night, but we will continue with that segment as well. Our football filibuster moved up a night, so a lot of things happening in that regard. So stay tuned for that. Corn, I know we also have some recruiting news to pass along. Clemson getting a commitment.
In basketball.
A basketball commitment.
Basketball, the 6'7" forward, Amir Sims out of Virginia, picks the Tigers.
Yes, so we'll have more on that in recruiting coming up later this hour. So a big commitment for the Clemson basketball team. Your phone calls as well. Your last chance to get your pick for the Clemson-Georgia Tech game, 800-956-7266. Reach out, grab a line. You can also drop us an email, talkback@sportstalksc.com, or drop us a tweet at SportsTalkSC. Be right back. Open phone lines for you, 800-956-7266. Your thoughts on Clemson, Georgia Tech tonight. You can also peek ahead to the weekend, USC, Kentucky in the Commonwealth on Saturday night. So hit us up there. Drop us an email, talkback@sportstalksc.com. You can also tweet at us in 140 characters or less at SportsTalkSC. And don't forget the garbage line. If you want to chime in, don't want to wait, or want to have your thoughts expressed in the middle of the night, and you just got to get it off your chest, that line is 803-509-2705. Let's go out to the guest line right now. Welcome in Mike Morgan. It's our Morgan on the Move segment, brought to you by Play It Again Sports in Columbia. Chris Mosley and the gang have everything you need in the way of golf equipment, fitness equipment, water sports, and more. Located at Bauer Parkway in Harbison, where they buy, sell, and trade what you want. Mike, hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. I'm glad I made the guest line and not the garbage line.
Well, you never know. I mean, we can move you real fast. We have that ability.
I'm sure you do. Hopefully we can stay on this one.
Bring your A game. Well, first of all, you got Georgia Tech and Clemson going at it tonight at Bobby Dodd Stadium. It has not been a good place for Clemson the past few times they played there. They've dropped 5 straight. How do you see this one shaking out?
I see Clemson winning by double digits. I'm not buying stock on Georgia Tech just yet. They have played a group of teams that are going to finish in the bottom of their division, or excuse me, their respective conferences. I just don't think the shock factor is going to come into play here. Clemson has kind of had their wake up call already. If this matchup was in week 1, that might be a different story. But I don't think right now, see Deshaun Watson and company put their guard down, and I just don't see Georgia Tech being as big a threat. I know Clemson's had problems in the past here. I don't think this team is comparable to those. And again, it's not like an out-of-conference team that comes into Georgia Tech that doesn't see them on a regular basis. They see them every year. You know, they're familiar with the offense. They're not going to be put into a situation where they're completely shocked by a triple option attack and cut blocking and everything that comes with facing a Paul Johnson team. So my guess is, and I hope it's an entertaining game just from a fan standpoint tonight, but my guess is Clemson could run away with it in the second half.
Well, you were down at the other Death Valley last week. LSU seemed like they had a laugher against Mississippi State, and then somebody hit the snooze button with about 7 minutes to go. In your opinion, watching that team in person, meaning LSU with so many high expectations, what in your mind is missing?
Well, it's a great question. It's a weird environment. You know, it was a great crowd and great tailgate. It always is in Baton Rouge, but just sitting there and calling that game in the press box, you didn't have the same feeling of the overly intimidating environment that it normally is. And I think part of that is because there's a good part of that fan base that's lost a little faith in Les Miles, in Cam Cameron. Yes, they made the quarterback change, but I hardly consider a young man who was a serviceable quarterback, not much more than that, at Purdue, the answer to all their offensive woes. And you saw that in the final, I think it was the final 35 to 38 minutes of that game. LSU doesn't score a point. They hold on barely to win, but that's just not good enough. It's not going to be good enough with the rest of this schedule. I really think that you're looking at an LSU team that is so talented in so many different spots, but they could potentially lose 2 or 3 more games this year. And if that happens, I think it's going to be a really turbulent off season for Les Miles.
Hey, Morgan, I'm in Atlanta with you, so maybe I'll catch you tomorrow at the gym.
Oh, good. Okay.
Corn's been practicing really hard.
Last time.
He's been really practicing his layups, Mike. So I think he's ready for an intense game of basketball.
I look forward to the rematch.
Back to the serious conversation and shifting gears to the ACC. Last weekend, Louisville, Florida State. Your opinion both ways. Louisville, do they have enough to sustain that kind of performance through a run through the schedule, especially with Clemson coming up next weekend? And on the flip of that, You expect Florida State to recover, bounce back, and sort of be waiting in the weeds, obviously pulling for Clemson to beat Louisville, and then hoping that Louisville stumbles again, and then they get Clemson later in the year down there.
Right. Let me start off by saying, I do a podcast now. One of the segments we do is hits and misses, things we kind of saw coming, things we didn't. I missed on that game. I don't mind telling you. I did not think that Louisville's defense would be able to do to Florida State what they did. And then watching that game, almost the entire game, because that was early and I did a night game, I didn't realize the amount of talent that Coach Grantham, who was unceremoniously fired from Georgia with Mark Richt, I didn't realize how much talent he has been able to accumulate, whether it's a Josh Harvey Clemens, a transfer from Georgia, who ran out his welcome in Athens, a Devontae Fields, who ran out his welcome at TCU. But I know, having done Georgia and TCU games in the past, those kids were highly touted 4 or 5-star type recruits. Now all of a sudden he picks them up off the waiver wire, so to speak. They got athletes, so they're not a one-dimensional team. I think Louisville's very legit. I don't think that was a fluke. We know they can score points, and Petrino's kind of the new evil genius. He's hated in a lot of different parts of this country, but the guy can call ball plays probably better than anybody in college football right now. So, yeah, I think they're very legit. I think they're very real. The question becomes, if all 3 of those teams go 1-1 against one another, what is the ACC tiebreaker? I don't know off the top of my head what it is, but I'd be very curious.
Well, they're bringing in an outside group if that happens.
Yeah.
They've already said they're going to bring in an analytical group to break it down for them if they have to.
Highest ranked team.
They're going to use metrics, variety metrics and numbers and trends and things like that to decide who the best team is.
Oh, well, that sounds unbelievably arbitrary.
I mean, how about, this is the ACC this year, and everybody talks about SEC, and rightly so. They've been dominant in college football for a long, long time. But you look at that division in the ACC, and even the Coastal Division looks pretty good right now. I don't think there's any question that you'd have to say the ACC top to bottom, and maybe even at the top is, you take Alabama out of the SEC, it's a very pedestrian league, Mike. The ACC looks much stronger this year.
Let me just say this. We all know that there's a 14 playoff. There's 5 powerful conferences, the Power 5 as they like to be called. We all kind of have conjecture at the beginning of the year what conference is going to be left out. And we assume that there are going to be 4 separate conferences with 1 team in the playoff, right? So if you think the Big 12 is going to be left out, and it's certainly looking that way, well, then you would say Pac-12, Big 10, ACC, SEC each get 1. If nobody emerges in the Pac-12, i.e. if Stanford stubs its toe this weekend or down the road and nobody else is very impressive in that league, there's a possibility the ACC could actually get 2 teams into a 14 playoff. I mean, that is not out of the realm of possibility this year. Who in the world would have thought that'd be the case at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, that would be.
I'm guessing nobody.
Yeah, not me. I would not have guessed that. I certainly would not have guessed that.
Because Louisville has the glamour points right now. And even though they say that doesn't come into effect, the committee last year said the style in which Clemson was dominating opponents had them at number 1. Right now, say Louisville has the style points.
No doubt about it. Mike, you have a week off. Where are you headed next for ESPN?
Heading to Arkansas the following week for the SEC Network. Arkansas has been an incredible story this year. If they somehow upset Texas A&M this weekend, Brett Bielema and the boys would be 4-0, and all of a sudden you got to at least start talking about them in the conversation. Everybody and their grandmother has Alabama winning the West this year. But Arkansas really has pulled off a surprise. I didn't see that coming either. I never know how to field Arkansas, but right now they're playing some very good football.
Mike, we appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week. Mike Morgan on the Move. We'll be right back.
We go inside the huddle with the coach and the quarterback up next. This is Sports Talk.
It's time for a little segment we call Coach and the Quarterback. The coach and the quarterback. The coach is Chuck Reedy. The quarterback is Steve Tannehill, and we're going to pick their brains here and get their thoughts on tonight's Clemson-Georgia Tech matchup and the USC-Kentucky matchup on Saturday. Gentlemen, hope you're both doing well. Coach Reedy, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, doing great. Thank you.
Glad to have you with us. How about you, Steve? You doing well?
Doing fine. Appreciate it.
How are things down at Tannehill's group therapy?
We got a good little crowd. Thursday's a good night. Got a good little crowd tonight. Should be interesting with the Texans game tonight, and obviously the Tigers, and hopefully the rain will hold off.
Now, do any Clemson Tigers?
Not much, but I would imagine some come by. We'll have the game on. They're not playing Carolina, so we're good.
All their money's green, right? You'll take their money.
As long as they're not loud, and as long as they don't have a whole group of people with orange on, I'm good.
Well, Coach Reedy, you're a guy that knows a thing or two about the option offense, obviously. Tell us what you think about Clemson's matchup against Georgia Tech tonight.
Well, I tell you, Clemson's defensive front is so big and physical. I think that Georgia Tech will have a hard time establishing, if you're going to run the option, you've got to establish the fullback first. And, what Clemson's going to try to do is knock the Georgia Tech offensive line back and try to get into the mesh point and disrupt, the execution of the fullback. And if they can do that, then it'll be very, very difficult for Georgia Tech, to really get things going. If I was looking at the Georgia Tech offensive line, and, they're 20, 30, 40 pounds, per man lighter than the Clemson defensive front. And, I just think they're going to have a hard time establishing the fullback.
Now, as far as looking at their line, you were talking about, coaches, obviously part of that cut blocking philosophy is not only to get the guy down, but also get the lineman's eyes from looking at where the play is being generated. It's something that you think that Coach Venables has really pressed with his younger defensive linemen, that really keep your eyes on the play. Don't worry about what's at your feet.
Oh yeah, and the cut blocking, mainly will be on the perimeter. Now they have some schemes where they'll cut block the defensive ends, but the inside, the two inside guys for Clemson, they're not going to be able to cut block them. And I think those are the guys that are going to really disrupt the Georgia Tech option, just because they're going to, like I said, they're going to try to get penetration, and they're going to try to disrupt the mesh point.
Now, Steve, you're a quarterback, but how would you have liked to played in the Paul Johnson triple option offense?
I wouldn't have. I have coached against it a lot, and it is tough to defend, no question. I couldn't. I'm not a runner, wasn't a runner, but it's going to be tough. It is when you only see it once a week. That's the problem. Once a season, excuse me. That's the problem. And we used to say, it's eye discipline, but it's really assignment football. And you each guy has an assignment, and you have to do your job. It's one of those games that, you just have to do your job, and every man has to, work together, but they got to do their job. It's going to be tough for Clemson. The atmosphere to Thursday night, they haven't played well there in the last 5 trips, but Clemson's so talented. They have more talent than Georgia Tech. There's no question about that. But it ought to be an interesting game. And like I said, this is assignment football for Clemson's defense, and Coach Venables is pretty good. Obviously, he's getting paid a lot of money, so this is one of those games where he's got to earn that check.
Well, you go back to the Troy game, Steve, and you're Deshaun Watson, and obviously, beginning of the season, you got a lot of confidence in your receivers, and then you suddenly have a rash of drop footballs. In your mind, as a quarterback, are you sort of losing confidence with some of the guys you're throwing to, or you just go back on the sideline? You tell these guys, look, let's concentrate, let's hold on to the football.
If a guy dropped one, right? Now, if he dropped it again, that'd probably be it. But you always go back to that guy, and it's trust. It's all those workouts in the summer and all those times, throwing together. And you got to trust those guys. I don't think Clemson's done a good job of spreading the ball out to all the talented wideouts they have. That's the one thing I see. I think they have so much talent, but I don't think they've done a good job of giving everybody a little piece. I think they need to do that a little bit better. But Watson's he's a great player. I know he hasn't really played maybe up to what everybody expected, but he was put on a high pedestal before the season with a lot of pressure on him. And so we'll see. I think he'll figure it out. Tonight will be one of them nights. I just hope, and I guess from the Clemson fan side, I'm not a Clemson fan, but you hope Clemson's not looking ahead to what could be, game day at Clemson and all those things with Louisville coming to town.
USC got a win at home against East Carolina last week. Coach Reedy, the first game at home, and they got back on track after that rough outing at Mississippi State. What was your takeaway from that win for the Gamecocks?
Well, last week that was a win for them. But a win is a win is a win. And, as we talked before, that was a game they had to have if they're going to get to 6 wins, which I think has to be, the goal for them this year to be able to get to 6 wins, to get in a bowl game and, get that extra practice and what it'll do for them in recruiting and all of those things. And, so it was one that certainly could have gone the other way, but they found a way to win. And, there's certainly something to be said for that.
Got his first career start, Steve, freshman quarterback out there. He made some plays when he had to. The offense got off to a great start. Then they kind of sputtered around, but on that last drive when they needed to get some first downs and put the game away, they did. How did you think McElwain played?
I thought he played good. They jumped on him so quick, and their defense was really kind of a bend, don't break night, and they forced some turnovers. And Coach will tell you that you turn the ball time, you're probably not going to win no matter how good you play. 4 turnovers is going to get you beat. But I think McElwain, that option play at the end is a great call. I think he gives us a chance, and I think he's going to get better and better. And we talked about it last week. If you're not going to play that well and you got a chance to lose, why not play with the young guy? And nothing against Perry. I think Perry has given everything he's got. But I just think that it was the right call, and I thought Brandon played good enough. He won, first start, win. And again, we got an opportunity with a win Saturday at Kentucky to be 3-1 at the end of September. And going into September, everybody would have said, we'll take that. So I think the guy's playing with some confidence, and I thought he played. Hey, anytime you win, you win. I like what McElwain did last week.
Coach, you coaching a young quarterback like a McElwain. Does he have all the offense now, or are you feeding him pablum? You've given him a little bit at a time.
Well, I think the fact that he went through spring practice, means that he's, further along than a guy that's just coming in as a freshman. I mean, he's been there all through the spring. And so, but, I'm sure that there's still some things that they haven't put in. But, I'm like Steve. I mean, certainly it was the right call, and he's going to do nothing but get better and better and better. The two best throws he made.
Coach, we're going to have to leave it there. We got to hit a break. We appreciate both of you, the quarterback and the coach.
We'll hold them over.
No, I think we can let them go. Probably. That's probably the best thing. We don't normally hold them over, do we? I don't really have anything else for them. Yeah. They both hang up.
No, but I actually hung up on Steve Kennedy, but then Chuck Reed said, "Hey, Chuck." I didn't hear anything back.
All right. Hey, you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Less than an hour till Clemson and Georgia Tech kick things off at Bobby Dodd's team in Atlanta. Phil Kornblut has set up shop there and is taking in all the sight sounds and I'm sure smells at the stadium. The press box can be a pretty rank place, Corn, as we both know.
No. It's nice here. They got a good spread apparently. I haven't had a chance to indulge myself yet, but hopefully I'll get there. I've got a great seat here about the 28-yard line down on the first row of press row. It's an open press box, and this is when you love an open press box because it's just a perfect night for football. 89 degrees, feels like it's 87. Humidity is 40%. The wind's about 9 miles an hour, gusting at 9. So we got a really good night for football. People are filing in. Both teams have been on the field for a while going through their warm-ups. While I've got the floor, guys, let's do some recruiting. Some of the guys I'll talk about here will one day probably be in one of these uniforms or a uniform somewhere else. Let's begin in basketball, though. As we mentioned off the top of the show, nice commitment for Clemson today. 6'7", Amir Sims, Dike, Virginia, announced his Tiger commitment. It had been trending that way for some time. He took an official to Clemson earlier this month. That was the only official out, and it's VCU, Miami, Pittsburgh, and Notre Dame, but did not take any other official visits. Clemson had been recruiting him very hard, and he told us earlier this year about his feeling for Clemson, feeling very passionate about the Tigers. They've been on him for a long time. He built a good relationship with Coach Brownell and Coach Smith. He really likes Brownell's style of play. He loves playing hard-nosed defense, and he loved the idea of getting into the ACC. He's the third commitment for the Tigers 2017 class, which is going to be a good-looking class with him and A.J. Oliver in there. Should they get Ejike Obina, which I don't see any reason why they won't get him, and also they've got 6'6" Malik Williams out of Orlando. It is a good-looking class that Brad Brownell is piecing together. Now to some football. Defensive back Jonathan Abram, Jones County Junior College, Mississippi, has set his official visit to USC for October 8th, according to the Big Spur. Checking in on 2018 defensive end Xavier Thomas of Wilson. He is being called by the analyst on the recruiting sites, the #1 player in the country for next year. He is an imposing guy at 6'3", 240. Right now, he lists USC, Clemson, Georgia as his top 3, with Ohio State and Florida State also high up on his list. But things are just beginning for him. Talking with his coach this week, Thomas Balcom at Wilson High School, they've got a plan in place for Thomas to handle everything, and they know that the great recruiting storm is headed their way. He was at USC last weekend. He was at Georgia the weekend before that. He plans to go to Clemson next weekend for the Louisville game. So he's going to try to see as many of the schools he's interested in as possible, and then try and maybe have a decision by the end of next summer, if not sometime earlier in the summer. I asked Coach if he compared him to, say, a Jadeveon Clowney or a Robert Kim Dichie. And he said, in his opinion, and he's been around a good bit, and he's coached a lot of college and NFL players, he compared him to Derek Thomas of the Kansas City Chiefs. Says he has an incredible first step, a tremendous pass rusher off the edge, but athletic enough and fast enough to drop back in coverage. 2018 running back Rashawn Allen of Orchard Lake, Michigan, has had contact from USC, plus he's hearing from Notre Dame, Northwestern, Michigan, Michigan State, Toledo, Western Michigan, Miami of Ohio, Vanderbilt, Syracuse, and Virginia. He's got 800 yards and 8 touchdowns in 4 games, including one game of 283 yards. 2018 defensive back Stephen Gilmore Jr. of South Point, the brother, former Gamecock star and current Buffalo Bill corner Stephon Gilmore. He's got an early offer from USC, plus he's hearing from Virginia Tech, Virginia, NC State, and North Carolina. 2018 linebacker Kobe Germany of Evans, Georgia, says he's being recruited very, very hard by Clemson. He'll visit there November 5th for Syracuse. He said USC is also recruiting him hard at this point. Plus, he's hearing from Georgia, Georgia Tech, Purdue, Louisville, UCLA, Central Florida, Mercer, Florida, and Auburn. Receiver Austin Connor of Dutch Fork had planned to make an announcement today on a commitment, but that's off now. In fact, he said he no longer has favorites. He's opened things back up. He did have USC, Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt, and Georgia as favorites. He said he's not hearing anything from USC at this point. And a couple of other basketball notes. USC's Frank Martin was in to see 6'8" Ibrahim Doumbia of Miami on Tuesday. Doumbia took an official to USC earlier in the month. He said it was a great experience. And he said as far as this meeting with Martin, it also was a very good meeting. They were talking about the official visit and how he enjoyed that. Doumbia was scheduled to visit Florida last weekend. He did not make that trip, and at this point he hasn't scheduled any other officials. And Clemson and USC were in last week to visit with 6'10" Brandon Huffman of Alaska. He attends school in Raleigh, North Carolina. He has not decided if he will visit either at this point. Frank Martin met with him one-on-one after a recent visit, and his coach, Brian Clifton, said they had a good conversation. He has been to South Carolina unofficially. His father is originally from Columbia, so there is family there. Huffman is going to Southern Cal for an official visit this weekend. He also plans to visit LSU, according to his coach. Georgia Tech, NC State, and Missouri also have been in recently to see Huffman, who recently was offered by North Carolina. All right, guys, there you go with recruiting. We remind everyone to check it out on a regular basis on our website, sportstalksc.com, and on Twitter, use the hashtag #STRecruiting. All right, I know you got the Governors coming up in the next hour, K-Mac, but shall we get into our own picks for this weekend?
We shall. We shall. Do you want to lead us off?
Why not? I feel best out front. I'm a front runner. I don't lead from behind. So tonight, Clemson and Georgia Tech. Clemson is laying 9.5, and I'm the only one taking Georgia Tech in the points. Call me crazy. That's how I see it.
Well, I'm going with Clemson, and I'm going with Clemson to easily cover that 9.5-point spread.
Well, I said last night. I said last night, and I truly believe this, that Clemson has been hearing people snarking at their lack of looking like the team they were last year. They'll get an early lead, 2-digit lead on Georgia Tech, make Georgia Tech play catch up, something they normally do not like to do, and I think they win by 14 points.
All right, let's see. Gamecocks at Kentucky. USC's getting 2.5. And everybody likes the Gamecocks getting the points except for Matt the newsman. So I'm taking the Gamecocks, and K-Mac, you and Pro are doing likewise.
Yes, we are. I like the Gamecocks to get maybe their only SEC road win of the season this weekend.
Yeah, it's a big game.
No.
Oh, well,
they're
their last one, I should say. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
not their only. They did beat Vandy. You're right.
And this game is interesting, Cormac, because I said today, the other day, that South Carolina, if you look at it, it'll be great to be 6-6 and make a bowl. They're one game ahead of schedule right now. If they can get 2 games ahead of schedule, and they've got some tough nuts to crack as they come home, and A&M and Georgia et al. Down the road, this would be a big game for them to get, and I think they get it. And I think the offense is going to open up a little bit more. I think you're going to see more young players play in this football game as well at the wideout position.
That's all they have. Their whole team's young players.
Yeah. All right, let me finish this up. Georgia at Ole Miss. Looks like kind of a split decision there. Half of us are taking Georgia, half are taking Ole Miss. Arkansas and Texas A&M. I'm taking Arkansas. Kev Cohen is taking the Hogs. Everybody else is taking the Tennessee, Florida, and only you, K-Mac. No, you and Jarmark. You two are the only ones predicting Florida will continue its winning ways.
All that Gator talk last night on our SC Wild segment. How could I resist?
All right, I'll turn it back to you guys for the Governors coming up in the next hour.
A special Thursday night episode of the football filibuster with Clemson playing tonight. We moved everything up a day, so our football filibuster will commence right now. A couple of esteemed former governors making their picks against the spread and against each other. And let's update the standings right now. Governor Hodges, who is on the line with us, Governor Beasley, who is still out and about in parts unknown, parts that are so distant we can't even reach him on a phone. That's where Governor Beasley is right now. Maybe he wants to be unfound after last week's 2-3 performance that drops him to 8-7 on the season, still above 500. I can't say anything about 8-7 because that's my record this season as well. But Governor Hodges, he's angry after what happened last year. Clearly, he is firing on all cylinders here in the early going. 3-2 last week, another winning week for him. He is 10-5 overall. So Governor Hodges, you've been picking him pretty darn well here early on.
I'm telling you, K-Mac, it's all that time in the film room, and it's paid off.
Breaking down the film. Yeah, it's been working. I know you were really dedicated, very motivated after not having a good year last year and falling to Governor Beasley. I think that is your first defeat last year. Am I right? I think that's the first time.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had 14 straight years of winning it, but last year it kicked me pretty bad, so I tried to get my revenge.
Yeah, you got maybe resting on your laurels a little bit, and you got focused, rededicated, and you're off to a good start. Well, we'll see if you can continue those picks. Even though we don't have Governor Beasley on the line, he has emailed his picks in detail. He's done a very good job of picking these. So let's jump into it. Let's start at the bottom and work our way to the top here on our sheets. We're going to start with the Florida-Tennessee game. The Vols over a touchdown favor, 6.5 points. It's the largest spread in favor of Tennessee in a long time in this series, Governor Hodges.
You're right. Am I picking first?
You are picking first.
If I am, then I am picking Tennessee. I feel very good about the Vols winning this one by at least 10 points.
All right. Governor Beasley's going with Florida. He says Tennessee might finally win this year, but Florida will scare them and keep it close. So you guys differ on pick one. Another SEC matchup is our next game. Arkansas taking on Texas A&M. This is a 6-point spread.
Well, I think the last couple of games have gone to overtime with those two, and Arkansas is much better than they have been this year. I'm going to pick Arkansas. I think A&M is going to win it, but 6 points is too many, so I'll take the Hogs.
You're taking the Hogs. It must be the partisan politics of an election year, because another difference here with Governor Beasley, he's going with Texas A&M. He says Arkansas has one of the best offensive line, but Myles Garrett and the rest of Texas A&M's defense will shut them down. So he is going with the Aggies. All right, another SEC game. We're heavy on the SEC this week in our picks. Georgia heading to Oxford to take on Ole Miss. Boy, the Rebels, they just absolutely blew it against Alabama. Looked like they were in control. Governor Hodges couldn't hold on. Nick Saban roared back, and they lost that game, and now they get Georgia.
Well, this reminds me of that Mississippi State and South Carolina game. After they're going to take the Rebels are going to take their frustration out on Georgia, which has won a bunch of close games, and the Rebels are going to win this one handily.
Yeah, it is a 7-point spread, so you're taking Ole Miss, laying that 7, and Governor Beasley agrees with you. He says Ole Miss will finally be able to finish a game against a weak Georgia offensive line, calling that Bulldog offensive line weak. All right, let's look at USC and Kentucky Saturday at the Commonwealth. 2.5-point spread. This open as a pick 'em. Now Tennessee is, or Kentucky, I should say, is favored by 2.5. The Gamecocks trying to go to 3-1, trying to go to 2-1 in conference play. Governor Hodges, how do you see this one?
Well, as much as I love my Gamecocks, I'm going to have to pick Kentucky. And we were very fortunate to win that game last week, and the coach called out Kentucky's defense today. So I think they're probably going to respond and win this by touchdown.
You're going with the Wildcats. That will be 3 straight for UK if they beat USC on Saturday night. Governor Beasley is going with the Gamecocks. New quarterback will find things harder against Carolina than he did against New Mexico State, as the Wildcats are going without Drew Barker this week, who was out indefinitely with that back injury. All right, finally, the matchup tonight in Atlanta, Georgia Tech and Clemson. The Tigers have not won in Atlanta against Georgia Tech since 2003. Governor Hodges, they are getting 9.5 points at home tonight against the Tigers.
Well, Tigers are going to win, but I'm going to take Georgia Tech in the points. This is the statement game for Georgia Tech every time they play Clemson, and Clemson's going to have a little trouble with that offense for Tech. But Clemson will win it by field goal.
All right, you're going with the Tigers, squeaking one out with the field goal. Governor Beasley is going to agree with you. He's going with Georgia Tech. Said lots of points for a Thursday road game. Strange things happen. Strange things often do happen in this series, no question about it. But both of you agree that Clemson will win, but both of you are taking Georgia Tech in those 9.5 points. Very good stuff. Now, are you back from Canada, Governor Hodges?
I'm back from Canada, but now I'm down in Destin, Florida, looking out at the ocean. So I'm doing some work down here today.
Yeah, one extreme to the other, from the mountains to the sea. Governor Hodges covers all ground.
You got it.
Well, best of luck to you. Yeah, best of luck to you, Governor. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, K-Mac. You too.
All right. So there you have it. A lot of disagreements between the two this week. They disagree on Florida and Tennessee. They disagree on Arkansas and Texas A&M. They both agree that Ole Miss will cover that point spread against Georgia. The Governors, I'm very surprised that Governor Hodges picked against USC. That must have been very painful for him, even getting points picked against his Gamecocks. And Governor Beasley, a Clemson guy, took the Gamecocks.
Interesting.
Politics can be a weird thing. And then both agree Georgia Tech and the 9.5 points. I'm in the minority. Now, Morgan on the move, Mike Morgan, he thinks Clemson's going to win big. I
did too.
Yeah, and you think they're going to win big, but a lot of other people. Now, Jarmart, looking at your picks, because we need to get Jarmart's picks because he's 10-5. Him and Governor Hodges have been on a roll. Kevin Cohen also hot at 10-5. You like Clemson to cover the 9.5 point spread too.
I'm with you guys. I think the deal on this one isn't going to be about the triple option in Georgia Tech's offense. I see their defense being the one that could spoil this one. They've got a really underrated defense, but I don't think it's something that Clemson isn't going to be prepared for. I am with the two of you. I think this is going to be a blowout. Clemson will cover that 9.5.
Yeah, I think Clemson's going to be up by 9.5 points at halftime. How about that?
That's yeah. We'll go for it. We'll go for it.
Going out on a pretty big limb. I don't think there's going to be any looking ahead to Louisville. I think Clemson is still dialed in. They still feel like they have something to prove. This is a big stage for them. It's another nationally televised game. They're the only act in town on Thursday night. I know you don't like playing Georgia Tech on short notice, but you do have an opportunity to get a few extra days for Louisville on the back end. So that's the positive aspect.
And you be better prepared from a psychological standpoint if you win this football game. I would hate to lose this football game and then see Louisville sitting there in my sights. I want to get a win, have those extra day or two to practice, rest the injuries if they have any tonight, and be ready for the Cardinals. And even though I think they're not looking ahead, I think they want to send a message to Louisville tonight. See what you're going to have to play next week when you come down to the
– Yeah, I mean, they still have to have that statement game. They haven't had it yet. Now, I think way too much is put in the Auburn game. They won that one. That was a tough game. They went on the Plains and won the football game, and they were really pretty much in control the entire time. They didn't blow them out like some people thought they would, but they were never in serious danger of losing that game. I know there was a couple of Hail Marys there at the end. It got a little hairy. I mean, it didn't have to be that way, but they were in control. I mean, at the half, Auburn was averaging like a yard a carry running the football. I mean, Clemson dominated that football game, just didn't dominate the score. They struggled against Troy. They did what they're supposed to against South Carolina State. I think they're going to do what they're supposed to do tonight against Georgia. We're going to hear from Ron Rivera, all sorts of things happening, non-football related in Charlotte. We're going to talk a little football with him. We're not going to actually talk. We're going to Closing in on kickoff at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Phil Kornblut is down in Atlanta. You've got the full crew together here on Sports Talk, bringing you anywhere else, taking you places you don't go anywhere else except on Sports Talk. Kornblut fired up the Pinto. That Pinto has, man, we put a lot of miles on that Sports Talk Pinto over the years, Korn. And you parked it outside of Bobby Dodd Stadium, where in less than 15 minutes, Clemson and Georgia Tech will kick things off. How's your crowd looking? How are the people starting to buzz around the stadium? And what'd you see in the warm-ups?
Now, was that an intended pun there, K-Mac?
No pun intended. The buzz. No, I didn't realize until I said it, but I'm an unintentional pun type of guy.
Yeah. Hey, you guys take it back. We've got the national anthem and the
you make sure you stand up. You better stand up fast.
Oh, yeah. I'm up, baby.
Don't want to read anything about a sportscaster. All right, so they're doing the anthem there, and while that's happening at Bobby Dodd, we'll get back to Korn momentarily. I still say Clemson wins. I think they win big. I think the defense might give up some plays against Georgia Tech, certainly, but they faced pretty good offenses in the past. They faced this Georgia Tech offense. They know this offense. They spend time on this offense on a regular basis at Clemson. They play them every year. So it's not this kooky thing that none of these guys have seen before. There are some first-year guys that haven't seen it in person. And Georgia Tech's going to score, but they are not going to be able to keep up with Clemson. And I don't know any Georgia defensive backs that are going to cover Mike Williams, much less cover Mike Williams and Artavis Scott at the same time, and Deion Kane and Ray McLeod. I mean, they just, there's too many weapons out there. And by the way, the Wayne train, Wayne Gallman, I think they're going to go ahead and hand him the ball 20 times tonight and feed him for the first time.
That's what's
going to happen. No need to even watch, turn off the monitors. I don't think we even need to watch the game. It doesn't really matter. I just told you what's going to happen. It's done. I ruined it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to spoil it for everybody.
Okay. Well, but that's why they play the games. You never know what's going to happen.
Oh, they're going to play it anyway?
It'll be interesting.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see that what Paul Johnson does, because what really freaks me out about Paul Johnson is he runs this offense, but he always gets talent at the wide receiver position. And I'm thinking he's got a feeling that I got to see if I can pick on those young safeties early in the ball game, see if they can cover somebody going deep.
All right, we do have Korn back. The anthem is over, and it is complete. Everybody stood, right, Korn?
Absolutely.
There were no kneelers. There were no
saw nothing out here that would raise any
the players aren't out there.
He wouldn't be able to tell, because you're supposed to keep your eyes on the stars and stripes while the anthem is playing.
And you're supposed to remain standing until the flag leaves the field, but that's a whole other thing. Anyway, Korn, let's get back to the game.
Yeah. Here's my thing. Everything you're saying is correct on paper. There's no question about it. But I want to see if Clemson's going to flip that switch. Can they just flip that switch and all of a sudden shift into high gear? If so, everything you say is correct. I do wonder about Clemson with the newness of some defense, seeing this offense for the first time, especially out on the edge. I know Christian Wilkins is a great player, but he's never in college faced the triple option as a defensive end unless he slid out there a little bit last year. I don't recall. On the other side, Farrell this is going to be his first time getting this opportunity. I know they're really good players, but how are they going to deal this first time out with a team that runs this offense extremely well? Plus, Georgia Tech, last year, Justin Thomas had his struggles. He was not a confident quarterback. It affected the entire offense. Now he is playing at a very high level. He's back running this offense the way it was designed for him to run it, and he's got a bevy of running backs with him. They just don't rely on any one or two running backs. They spread it out quite a bit. And then when you think you're keying in on the running game, they rise up and hit you with a deep ball down the field. That's the thing. They can strike very deep, very quickly with their passing game, efficiently with their passing game. They don't throw it a lot, but when they do, they usually do some damage. So these are all things that you have to be worried about if you're Clemson, and why I think Georgia Tech's going to be in this game in the fourth quarter.
While we have a second, want to give you a reminder that the Sports Talk High School Football Report, a service of Farm Bureau Insurance, is going to be hot and heavy tomorrow night with the full-fledged high school reports coming down. Corn, I know there's some big games around the state coming up tomorrow that you will be breaking down, and Jay will be back there breaking them down as well. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you could be saving a whole lot of money even if you receive a quote before. Rates are now more competitive than ever. Get a free quote today from your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Corn, you may now proceed to continue with your thoughts on Georgia Tech. That was a seamless segue there. I mean, textbook.
That was very nice.
That
was very nice.
What, I should win an award for that one.
I will say this. Let me leave you with this. There are a lot. I mean, Clemson fans must not have jobs, or they're all retired, or they love their football team.
They live in
There's
Clemson.
a lot of Clemson fans here
Atlanta.
tonight. Yeah, that's a lot of them do, and of course it's a short ride from Clemson. But as I look around, of course you've got what appears to be the entire Tiger band here, and then the lower portion of that side of the seating is filled with Clemson people. The upper deck in that corner is largely Clemson people. Clemson people spread throughout the upper deck. All the way to the other side is full with Clemson. You go to the end zone seating upstairs, half of it is largely Clemson people. This place could start to have a sound of Death Valley here if Tigers get it rolling. It's not like it was in Columbia last year where it was Williams, Bryce, Frank Howard Field. It's not quite like that, but they got a lot of Clemson people here tonight.
I hear the crowd starting to take effect. And by the way, that was Bombs Over Baghdad. It sounded like playing in the background, Corn. If you want to download that on your iPod for the ride home. I know you're a big AT alien.
I have no idea what that is. I will say this, though. I was outside the stadium. And, of course, it's the times that we live in. They set off a firecracker or something here at the stadium.
Oh, boy.
And it sounded like a darn bomb blast. And I mean, like,
and you dropped to the ground, screaming in the fetal position, and you had to go back to your car and change.
Am I going to be part of a news story here tonight, or are we going to be strictly on sports? Thank goodness it was nothing but a loud firecracker going off here. So,
yeah, there could be some cannons after scores tonight, Corn, so don't be afraid, all right? I don't want you soiling yourself there in the press box.
And let me give you, as fans like to know, the uniform report tonight, brought to you by us. Tigers will be in their orange tops, their white pants, and their orange helmets with the white tiger paw on the side. That has
what about Georgia Tech?
I'm going to leave you.
Are they wearing the white helmets or the gold ones?
They are wearing the white helmets. Let's see. They're in all white with the white helmets. Very classy look by Georgia Tech.
Stormtrooper look. All right, Corn, we might check in with you after the first quarter or before we say goodbye here for the night, but enjoy the game and hunker down. And a reminder to those of you listening to us, you can keep up with everything Corn's doing on our Twitter feed throughout the game at SportsTalk SC. You can interact with him there. People love to interact with us on Twitter during games and tell us how smart our takes are, how on point our analysis is, how we are just on top of things. Love the interactions that we have on Twitter during games, so be a part of that. And also after the game, you want to hear what Dabo Swinney had to say, the highlights. Sometimes, let's face it, Dabo can bloviate a little bit. He might go for 40 minutes. We'll give you the best stuff, put it right there on the website, sportstalksc.com, the players, the coaches, it's all there. And Sports Talk at the Stadium, which you can enjoy as well, a video recap of Corn giving his thoughts on the game. And don't forget the garbage line. Somebody call the garbage line tonight, 803-509-2705. Maybe in the first quarter you see something that just drives you crazy, call the garbage line, 803-509-2705, unfiltered. You can say whatever you want. We'll clean it up if we decide to use it on the air. If you just want to tell Jared how much you love his work behind the board, go ahead, call the garbage line, 803-509-2705. We're going to hit a break. Some Ron Rivera coming up on the other side. The Carolina Panthers getting set for the Vikings. All sorts of things happening in Charlotte that they're trying to muscle through right now leading up to that game. right, updating some things on the Will Muschamp radio show, some newsy things coming down. Lorenzo Nunez, everybody has been waiting to see what he was going to do from that move to wide receiver. It sounds like maybe not much, according to Muschamp. He said that Lorenzo Nunez is a possibility to redshirt. Muschamp said in a perfect world they'd love to take that option. David Cloninger tweeting, if there are injuries at wideout this season, Nunez will play. If not, Nunez has agreed with Muschamp that a season off may be okay. So there's some news coming out of that. Muschamp says they feel like they've done a decent job running the football, and they thinks the O-line is taking too much criticism. So they've averaged 5 yards per carry last week. There have been some questions about that O-line.
How about the cadence? He didn't mention that?
No, haven't seen that.
Because he mentioned that at the beginning, that they normally going on almost a similar snap count just to keep things simple. And I think he's picked up, the defenses have picked up on that.
Okay, how about this? Apparently Steve Spurrier was at the call-in show, according to David Cloninger. Said Jerry was up there in Columbia for a few days, and he's getting a chance to go to his old high tomorrow. And Spurrier thanked USC and Mike McGee for hiring him. Mentions he was 60 when he won his first game at USC, and he thinks Will Muschamp will be a great coach. They're getting some excellent guys. So there you go. Steve Spurrier making an appearance on the Will Muschamp call-in show. Steve Spurrier has been in the media more this year, I think, than last year.
I guess he went to visit his son and see a good football game because he was at Oklahoma.
Wearing Oklahoma stuff. He's kind of turned into the Drake of college football, where he just goes and puts on the swag of whatever school he's at that particular day. He also said Donnell Stanley, it looks like it's going to be after the open date, same schedule for him as it was before with that injury after the open date when he'll return. He was injured against Vanderbilt. Rico Dowdle will start practicing on Sunday. He will travel to Kentucky with the team, but will not play. Camper will also be back after the open date, according to Will Muschamp, following those tweets from David Cloninger at the state newspaper. Ron Rivera, he had a lot of things to talk about in Charlotte today, not all of them related to football. As we all know, it has been a very, very volatile situation in the Queen City for the past couple of days. There were protests going on that were peaceful throughout the day yesterday that devolved into not protest. It was an all-out riot last night. I mean, that's the only way you can describe that, with glass being broken, reporters being attacked. There were a couple of reporters from WLTX in Columbia that ended up in the hospital last night. It was just a bad scene
tear gas
in Charlotte. Well, one of them, I mean, there was a reporter that somebody was trying to put him in a fire that was lit there on the streets. It was just a mess in Charlotte, and a lot of the Panthers speaking out. Thomas Davis saying he understands why people are upset, but the violence isn't the answer. And Ron Rivera also talked about this. He's been talking about this, but spoke more about it, and the fact that the game against the Vikings will go on as scheduled on Sunday at 1:00.
I do. I think we should play the football game here, and I'm going to tell you why. I was in San Diego when they had the fires. I know this is different to a degree, but playing the game helped to bring some normalcy. And I think that's what people are looking for now too. I think, we are in a state of emergency. I think it's unfortunate, but I do think that there are certain elements right now that are driving the situation and circumstances. I think there's a group of people that want to do the protest the right way. They want a peaceful protest. They want to make their point. But unfortunately, there are some agitators who have an agenda, want to do it their way, and it's not the right way, And I think. I think, again, once we can, things can get settled down, and I do believe that, what Chief Putney's trying to do, Mayor Roberts is trying to do, I think we can, this city can get back to who she is.
You don't like the mixed politics and football, but today's been different. I mean, Greg and Thomas came in here, talked about it passionately. You're addressing it again. I know we're asking the questions, but is the day different because of what's going on? It's the time it needs to be mixed.
It has to be, unfortunate, because as I said, I think there's some people that are agitators, that have an agenda, that are trying to direct this, make more out of it than what it really is. This has to be on the national discussion. It has to be. But at the same time, we have to do it the right way. And you guys know how I feel. I always talk about voting. And, I talked about what happened 8 years ago. When this country elected African-American president, and what happened? The people came out and voted. Unfortunately, 4 years after that, they lose the House and Senate. Why? Because those same people that voted them in, not all of them showed up to vote. To institute change, you've got to have some serious politics involved. And to me, I think the biggest and strongest thing you can do is vote. Get politically involved. Make a difference. But do it the right way. Okay? Do it the right way. And I really do believe that's how you do it. That's what this country is supposedly founded on. It's a democracy. Okay? Majority rules. So I think that's what we need to do. I think more so than anything else, we need to be educated. We need to have, the transparency, and we need to have the trust and honesty out there. I mean, we got to tell the truth, and hopefully that'll come about soon when the police have finished their investigation. I understand that, Chief Putney has said they're gonna allow the family and their representatives to see the video. That's my understanding from this morning. So hopefully that'll help and get people settled down and get people to understand exactly what happened, because I'm not going to weigh in on either side because I don't know, and I think I have a little bit of perspective on this type of a situation to a degree. I have an ethnically mixed family. My younger brother married to an African American. Their kids favor her side in color, and I worry about them. I do, but I also have brothers and other family members and friends that are police officers. And I worry about their safety as well every day. So I'm not going to weigh in on that part politically, just so you guys know. I'm not. But we have to find a solution. And again, I think it's through education, transparency, and the truth.
You take a lot of pride in the culture of your locker room. What have you seen out of your guys in terms of conversation and since the events of that?
The neat thing is when it's been time to do football, they've done football. But when it's times like this, when they have some moments, you do hear them talking about it. You do hear them discussing it, and you hear it pretty open. And as Greg said, as Thomas said, if you look at the locker room, you look at the diversity, and I think Greg said it best, where they're all from, different socioeconomic backgrounds, all races, colors. I mean, but yet they talk to one another and they care about one another. And the thing that I think has really helped to make this team strong has been what goes on in that locker room. And they really do. And what's even more impressive is when they have something going on, like when Thomas has something to do with his Defending Dreams Foundation, or Greg has the Hardest Yards, or Cam has his events. They turn out in numbers for one another, to be there to support one another. And I think Greg said it as well, is that, if we can do that in the community, we're going to all come together. And I think this community can, because as I said, I mean, I've seen it firsthand, the greatness of Charlotte.
All right, Ron Rivera touching on a lot of issues. So difficult for these coaches. I know Cam Newton had to talk about this yesterday. It's a tough spot for them to be in because every word, as Dabo Sweeney found out last week, everything that they say is dissected and analyzed and critiqued. If they don't say something exactly right. I mean, he's a football coach by trade, but I thought that was pretty well said by Ron Rivera. And he personalized it. He talked about where he was coming through. Thomas Davis, if you get a chance to hear what he had to say, it was very good. I mean, that's their city. I mean, that's where they live, and they're seeing these things. Greg Olson said he pulled his kids out of school today because there was some talk about things that could be happening in that area around their schools. We all just need to listen more, maybe, and not get into our tribal corners. And hopefully this is all going to pan out. And hopefully Sunday's game will be a chance for everybody to get back together and just have fun and watch football and have that common thing of cheering for the Panthers again in Charlotte. We'll be back. More sports talk right around the corner. Hey, whether you're part of Gamecock Nation or bleed Clemson Orange, everyone can agree on Founders Federal Credit Union with a convenient location at the Russell House on USC's campus and now a new location on Highway 93 in Clemson that is now open. Founders is a sure fan favorite. Visit relaxjoinfounders.com to see if you qualify for membership. Founders Federal Credit Union is federally insured by NCUA. It did not take Clemson long to get on the board in Atlanta. They went right through Georgia Tech, scored a touchdown, Deshaun Watson to Mike Williams, and then forced a quick 3-and-out, and the Tigers already on the plus side of the field on their second possession. I don't think this is going to be a pretty night for Georgia Tech. They're going to get rambling wrecked.
In fact, Georgia Tech blew a chance already because on the punt return, Clemson fumbled, and they recovered their own fumble.
Ray McLeod almost had another goof.
Yeah, he did. He fumbled.
Now, was it a muffed?
No, it was a fumble.
So he was running back.
He was running. And
little strip action. Okay, well, we'll see what the Tigers can do on their second possession. We will try to check in with Kornblut one more time. Before we do that, though, let's listen in on a little bit from USC defensive end Darius English. He really has done well, a senior. Coming on strong in Muschamp's defense, getting some pressure on the quarterback, really coming into a zone. He's a guy that people have talked a few seasons and kind of been waiting for him to do something. He's doing it now. Kornblut was among the media that caught up with him earlier this week as he broke down the matchup against Kentucky.
Prepare for both guys. Their starter, he can really sling the ball, and the backup guy, he can move around a little bit. So we're gonna prepare for both guys.
The confidence you guys have from that performance against East Carolina, taking into this week, just talk about that.
We definitely gonna come in with a lot of confidence, but we're gonna keep our preparation the same. We're gonna practice hard, come out with a lot of intensity, and try to get after them.
Have you thought about what it would mean though? Get the win, you'd be 3-1, and that would equal the wins all of last year.
Yeah, I believe a lot of guys, look back and say, we wish we'd have went a little harder Mississippi State week, but it's nothing we can take from that. So we're just gonna, roll with it and try to use that to motivate us for the future. Like, we can't take any games as a joke. We gotta come out every week and prepare.
I know you want to win more than 3 games, obviously, but to go 3-1, what would that mean for this team?
That would be big, but we strive for a lot more than that.
How did it feel from a defensive line standpoint to come up with 4 sacks last weekend?
That was big. We haven't had many sacks yet this year, but we finally got a chance to really get after the quarterback. And, we hope to continue that in the future.
Was it because of they play such a quick tempo? It's hard to get sacks against a team like East Carolina. But what would you point to as why you guys had that success?
I believe our success was due to the defensive backs. They played amazing. Like, their coverage was excellent the whole game. It showed with their interceptions and all of that. So I believe that's what really helped us this week.
Talk about the challenge of Kentucky and what they present.
They're a team that comes out. They have a lot of intensity at their place. It's going to be loud. We're going to have to match their intensity. They're no pushover. They're going to come out ready to fight, ready to play.
They were kind of embarrassed by Florida a couple of weeks ago. Would you expect, much like Mississippi State, a team that's kind of looking to?
Yeah, we definitely expect that team, who's been lost a couple of games, that's going to come out ready to redeem themselves. So we're going to come out ready to match their intensity.
2 years ago, they had a guy named JoJo Kemp run crazy on you guys. Have y'all remember? You remember him? You remember that night in Lexington?
Yeah, I remember that night. He had a lot of rushing yards, and it was like they was running the same play over and over. We couldn't stop it. But this year, we're gonna come out ready to play, ready to match their intensity.
What did you see from the film so far of their game the other day?
They're an impressive team. They got a lot of guys with talent. Like, their back, he gets on the edge. He can make stuff happen. They got receivers that, can fly down the field. Their quarterback can make plays. They're a very impressive team. But, our preparation, that's what we believe is going to help us a lot.
Darius English, 4 sacks last week for that Gamecock defense. Pretty remarkable for them, considering last year they probably went 6 games where they didn't have 4 sacks. It was a huge struggle for the Gamecocks in that regard. They'll have their work cut out for them again in Lexington, Kentucky. Let's check in on Clemson. They're on the move again, up 7-0 on Georgia Tech in the first quarter. Kornblut taking in all the action. Korn, looks like it's been pretty easy for Clemson here in the early going.
Yeah. I have to tip my cap to you, at least early on, because the Tigers have flipped that switch. They look really, really good offensively and defensively. They took the opening kickoff, went right down the field, and scored a touchdown just as easy as you would want it. On Georgia Tech's first play on offense, Christian Wilkins broke through and dropped Thomas for a loss. That kind of set the tone for that series, and the Tigers just quickly shut down Georgia Tech's offense. They were in the backfield clearly on every play of Georgia Tech's opening drive. Then Clemson gets the ball again. They avoid a mini disaster because on the punt return, Ray McLeod was starting to get something going. He got hit and he fumbled, but Clemson recovered it. And the Tigers go down, drive it down the field. However, two passes towards the end zone. One, Mike Williams caught, but he was out of bounds on the left side of the end zone. Second one, Deshaun Watson overthrew the receiver. And they just missed, as I'm talking to you, the Tigers just missed. Hugel just missed a very makeable field goal attempt, 27 yards. He missed it wide right. So Georgia Tech survived. They're getting dominated. Clemson's got 112 yards already at this point. They look very good on offense. When Watson goes back to pass, the offensive line is just giving him a beautiful pocket so far. Plenty of time. On that first Georgia Tech offensive series, the Tigers did suffer an injury to one of their linebackers, and he went off the field with some help. Jalen Williams was in, and he hurt his right leg. It looked like a knee thing, but don't know for sure. He went off with some help. He was able to put a little bit of pressure down on the leg as he was walking off, but they'll have to obviously take a look at that. So he is out for now. So 7-0. Clemson has looked very good. They look unstoppable except for that missed field goal.
Yeah, special teams, Pro.
That scares you. Special teams, we said the fumble, then the missed field goal. See, it's almost like that old wrestling things we used to see when guys give you 1-2 count and then lift them up. Don't start lifting Georgia Tech up because that's a big victory for them because they've fallen behind by 10 or 14 points. Their offense has to start playing catch-up. I think that's a win for Georgia Tech, so they can now still stay on schedule.
Hugel was so good last year filling in for Lakeup with all his problems that Lakeup had, and Hugel stepped right in there and won the job. Solid, was one of the best kickers in the country, really. But early on this season, he doinked an extra point at Auburn that made that game completely different. They didn't trust him to kick a field goal that would have put them up 9 late in the game. And now he misses a 27-yarder. And special teams, last year it was a coverage that cost the Tigers, and it cost them a national championship, you could argue. And the onside kick, you could say those were the things that were the difference between winning a national championship and losing it. And dropping the punt on the 1-yard line after you were going to touchdown, the fumble there they got away with on this drive, and then the missed 27-yarder. 27-yarder in college, that's a chippy. And I give the guys a break in college on the 40-yarders. The NFL guys make those look easy. Those are tougher in college, but you're inside of 30. You got to get points there. And if you're Georgia Tech, you're probably going,
we dodged.
Yeah, we took we were wobbly here, but now you've got the ball, get some points. Anything. All right, keep up with Korn on Twitter at SportsTalk SC. He'll have Sports Talk at the stadium. Comments from Dabo Swinney and players. Also at SportsTalkSC.com. All of that available for you shortly after the game ends and free of charge. You can't beat that. There's not a better place with better coverage for a better price than SportsTalkSC.com. Pro, enjoyed it, as always. Jared Rogers-Martin once again doing magic behind the glass. Kornblut in Atlanta taking in the game, bringing us good stuff. Everybody else behind the – we don't have anybody else behind the scenes. Carson's not here tonight. So it's just us. Let's go watch some football. We're going to go do what everybody else is doing, watch some football. Have yourself a great night. TGIF episode of Sports Talk tomorrow night here on South Carolina Radio Network. Talk to you then.